advice and actionable tips for applying Challenger skills across your sales process through bite-sized lessons. More than ever, as a professional seller or really any customer-facing rep with a revenue responsibility, you need to be playing at the top of your game right now. So the series is here to help you break down the skills, behaviors, and activities that give challengers a leg up in complex sales environments and direct you to some brand new resources and tools we've built to support your efforts, available exclusively in the Challenger Activation Portal. I'm your host for the series, John Shea. I'm a senior consultant and senior facilitator with the Challenger team. I've led over 60 Challenger transformations across the globe and trained a few thousand salespeople along the way. I've worked in sales and marketing operations, corporate strategy, market research, account management, and sales. And I'm here to share as much tactical, research-backed guidance as I can. Each month, a guest or guests will join me to discuss the topics at hand and share their experience and perspectives along the way. So today, I'm thrilled to have Mike Randazzo join me. Mike's a colleague of mine, Senior Director of Marketing and Sales Enablement here at Challenger. Thanks for joining today, Mike.
John, thanks for having me. Excited to kick off the series with you, and thanks to everyone who's joined us on the line today. Lots of folks dialing in, so appreciate you being here.
Fantastic. So here's what we're going to do. Mike and I pre-recorded a conversation earlier that we're going to play back here for the next 25 minutes or so. We did this to ensure we don't run into any unexpected technical issues with so many folks on the line. So in a moment, we're going to shut our cameras off, play the recording, but we're going to be here live monitoring the chat and Q&A. So please use that functionality should questions arise during the replay. We may also pop up a few polling questions along the way to get a pulse on a couple of different topics. So in about 25 minutes, we'll come back live on camera, give you a quick overview and show where you can access a playbook, help you execute on some of the activities we've highlighted in today's sessions, as well as take any outstanding questions that come through via the chat. Mike, sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So today's topic, stop wasting time on the wrong opportunities. And I think, as we know, time being our most valuable resource is something that's been written about and referenced endlessly by thought leaders, entrepreneurs, billionaires, the everyday person alike. I mean, someone posts on LinkedIn about this basically every day. But I think actually Dwight Schrute, as you know, the eccentric, high-performing seller from the popular NBC sitcom The Office, said it best when he said, "I wouldn't waste your time, and I wouldn't dare waste mine." And at the core of it, challengers think this way. They segment their territories with a scientific approach. They ruthlessly prioritize the best fit opportunities, and then they execute. We win more by losing early. And with that, let's get into it. Michael Dell, founder of Dell Computer. Most people know him pretty well. When he was in high school, Michael sold subscriptions for a local newspaper. Now, most of his peers with the same gig did what many people would do. Conventional wisdom would say selling newspapers, subscriptions is a numbers game. So do the legwork, put in the hours, go knock on every door, and try to sell to every family in the neighborhood. But not Dell. He spent a little more time preparing up front, thinking critically about how to find and then sell to customers who are most likely not to waste his time. He did some research and found that his most likely subscribers were going to be newlywed couples who had just purchased a home or families who had just moved into the neighborhood. So he checked courthouse marriage license records and scanned listings for new home purchases across the city. And his target list went from looking like this to looking like this. The strategy paid off. His senior year of high school, working a part-time job, he made $18,000 in 1 year, which, to put it in context, in the late 70s and early 80s, it's a lot of money for a high school senior with a part-time job. Furthermore, he wrote about it in an assignment for his history class, and his teacher didn't believe the figure because that would mean he made more than they did. Fun story, but the point is, by taking the time to think critically and do some research on his targets before picking up the phone or hitting the streets, his conversion rate was exponentially higher, and he saved a ton of time by avoiding low potential targets and focusing only on the best fit opportunities. So the question for everyone on the line today is, are you employing a similar strategy when it comes to your own territory? Are you still knocking on every door? This hasn't been ideal for a while now, and it's especially dangerous in this environment. believe it or not, based on some simple back of the envelope math, it is likely that you're spending just about 1 month of your time every year on deals that you will lose to the status quo. Let me explain. We know from our research that 38% of all purchase attempts end in status quo or no decision. Said another way, status quo likely wins more than you do. So by approaching our opportunities through a typical fill the funnel or door-to-door approach, we end up wasting our time on opportunities that are not good fits from the start. Mike, I don't want to spend too much time here, but I know you were involved in some of the work that went into the research that uncovered this 38% statistic. Can you give folks a sense of why this is important, why this is critical?
Yeah, so very quickly, I mean, this was part of our most recent B2b buying study in 2019. So basically surveyed a little under 700 purchase decision makers across all kinds of companies, different categories, verticals, geographies. And we asked them all kinds of questions around, how they're making purchases, how many people are involved in the purchase process at this stage of the game, the things that salespeople do in a supplier or solutions provider organization to actually influence the decisions they make and the directions that they ultimately go. And as part of the analysis, we actually found something really kind of astonishing, right? Buying groups here, which, by the way, not on the page, but around 11 people on average involved in the typical B2b buying group today. Very diverse, cross-functional in nature, and of course, right now, physically distant from one another as they try to make decisions. But these buying groups, they form to investigate a business need and then a potential solution to that need, right? And so they go through what is on average like a 4 to 5 month cycle at this point, a process of gathering information, evaluating options, putting out RFPs, fielding Zoom call after Zoom call, demo after demo. And 38% of the time, they choose not to choose. They choose to defer to the status quo. They disband without making a purchase. So that's the finding, right? Now, whether it's 38% or 24% or 47% doesn't really matter. The fact is, right now, as a sales professional, it's likely that 4 out of 10 of the pursuits that you're actively you've got in your pipeline and your funnel are going to end up this way, if not more, especially in this environment. So that's really the sort of the crux of the issue behind the 38%.
I think, we as salespeople have always known that status quo is our number one competitor, but until I saw this research, I had not realized that status quo was winning more than we were as salespeople. So yeah, that's the scary part. And if we take a true challenger approach to this, some back of the envelope math on the right side of the slide here. So if you assume that you pursue 15 opportunities each quarter, 60 opportunities a year, multiplied by the 38%, means that about 20 of those deals will be lost to the status quo. Now, if you assume time you spend prospecting, 2 to 3 hour-long meetings that usually run long, let's face it, your follow-up emails, internal and external contracting negotiations, you're probably spending 8 to 10 hours per opportunity, which equates to 160 to 200 hours are spent on those deals, equating to the 1 month of your time we referenced earlier. Now, this is just an average. It's a back of the envelope calculation to show an example, a challenger pain calculator, if you will. You may pursue a higher volume, or you may have a set number of accounts as an account manager. So I would encourage you here and now, do the math for yourself. Like, how many hours are you spending? How much of your time is dedicated to deals that you will lose to the status quo? Now, you're never going to recoup 100% of that time. It's just an impossible feat to go after. But what could you do, or what would you do with a quarter of that time back, or half of it? What could you get done with 2 extra weeks on the year? So there's got to be a better way, a way to avoid the 38%. So if you've been with us for a while, you've been on the challenger journey for a while, you know about the concept of nail versus wedge. That's how challengers really try to view or manage their funnel. They want their sales cycles to look less like a traditional funnel or wedge and more like a nail. They identify the best fit opportunities, quickly deprioritize or disqualify bad fits, reallocate their time and energy on engaging customers with commercial insights, driving urgency through the use of change, and they coach their, hopefully, mobilizers to build consensus in their buying groups and generate that collective yes. So that's the mindset, but there's more to it, right? How do we actually pull it off? How do we execute these challenger behaviors day in and day out, ensuring a disciplined focus on advancing the right opportunities through our pipeline? So to answer that question, Mike, I'm going to kick it to you to talk for a few minutes about the new framework that we've built to help teams accomplish that. So you can tell us a little bit about Tempo.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you kind of giving me the form today, because this is a really interesting and exciting launch of a new framework for us. So we built this framework. We're also referring to it as a method in some cases. It's really designed just to help folks like yourselves, everybody on the line today, execute critical stages of complex sales cycles. So as John alluded to, we call this Tempo, aptly named in my opinion, and it's a nod to kind of what we talked about earlier, really our most precious resource being time. So if you take a look left to right, it goes target, engage, manage, plan to close, and operate and grow. You see Tempo right there across the top. Now these represent the various stages of a sales cycle generally, right? These are the activities that sales professionals and other commercial staff, customer-facing individuals typically follow across each stage, everything from prospecting and discovery to commercial teaching and managing stakeholders to negotiations and closing. And then ultimately, if you think about after we close a deal on a new relationship, growing that relationship over time with customers. So really, regardless of your role, if you're on the line today, if you're a customer-facing rep in some way, shape, or form, your remit falls somewhere on this frame. And so at the highest level, as you see across the bottom of the page here, Tempo really is designed to help you do two things. Number one, understand how and when to use certain challenger skills and behaviors that you've all been trained on in the day-to-day. And then number two, align the challenger approach or method, if you will, to your sales process, to whatever sales process you've got in your organization, whatever way you manage cycles and funnels and so on and so forth. Now, let me take just quickly 2 minutes here. I don't want to detract from the topic at hand here, but I think it's important just to kind of give a sense for how we break this down. And the way to look at target, first and foremost, perhaps you're in a pre-sales role, you're an SDR, maybe a marketer supporting an ABM strategy. You're going to be most interested in target. Target is where you put in the work before you actually reach out and engage your customers. You're talking about territory planning, prospecting, research and preparation, all those sorts of things. Now, if you move over to the middle section here, we'll take engage, manage, and plan to close all together and call this the sales process, if you will. If you're a quota-carrying individual contributor, you're an AE, an SE, a business development rep, whatever your title is, the sales process itself, this is where you use the skills that we all know and love. So teach, tailor, take control, building and managing constructive tension, building consensus in the buying group, coaching mobilizers to sell on your behalf internally in that 11-person buying group, using powerful requests to test commitment and drive forward momentum. And then, of course, landing the plane, right? Finalizing proposals, overcoming final mile sticking points, learning how to adapt and manage when that mystery stakeholder shows up at the 11th hour and becomes your final signature before you can actually move forward, and you didn't realize it the last 4 months. Now, then, of course, after this stage, right, the deal gets signed, then the real work begins in many ways. We've got a closed opportunity, and now we need to bring our customer success and account management teams in, ultimately responsible for increasing the lifetime value of these accounts. And I think really important point here, not just renewing relationships, but growing those relationships over time. And it's more likely than not nowadays that if you're the one that initially sold into that account, in the first place, you're staying involved in some way, shape, or form, or you're on the hook for the lifetime value year over year, right? So operate and grow is really just the beginning of that long and lucrative relationship. We're talking about onboarding and implementation best practices, driving utilization, proving value, and then ultimately renewing accounts and growing those opportunities. And some of you may even be in a role here where you're responsible for all of this. I might refer to you as the Tempo power users, if you will. This should be especially helpful. as you break down the critical activities and skills that you're going to need to leverage in different stages across different timeframes. Now, we're gonna be unpacking Tempo framework over time here over the next few months, and we're actually going to use it as the roadmap for this series that John's hosting. So I'm really excited to kind of take this bit by bit. As you can see across the bottom of the page here, on a monthly basis, each of these lessons will effectively be aligned to the stages of Tempo. So we'll tackle 2 to 3 key activities, critical priorities for each stage associated with the topic at hand. But for now, John, thanks for giving me a few minutes there. I'll turn it back to you because the topic at hand, of course, stop wasting time in the wrong opportunities, aligns perfectly with Target. So without further ado, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm really excited about what you and the team have put together on this. And I love how closely it ties to the concept of sales velocity, just how quickly we're interacting with our potential buyers. And I think Tempo is the perfect framework and roadmap for this series as we move forward. So, we've talked a bit about the world of 38%, the importance of avoiding those opportunities that end up going nowhere and end in the customer saying, you know what, we're just going to wait and see on this. Let's talk about what the right opportunities look like in this environment. So one thing challengers know is they have to quantify the cost of status quo in order to make the pain of same greater than the pain of change. Now, based on some research we've been continuously conducting since the start of the COVID-19 outbreak, trying to better understand the impact it has had and continues to have on businesses across the globe. We found that companies, essentially a sampling of all types of companies you'd find in your pool or territory, break down into generally 3 financial categories: growth, business as usual, and slowdown. So 10% of your accounts are growing, largely in verticals deemed essential or have products and technologies that are critical right now in a COVID world. So think CPGs, video conferencing technologies, personal protective equipment, or maybe in some cases, air quality control, ventilation technologies, you name it. 30% are in a somewhat of a business as usual mode right now. They do have cost reduction measures in place, reallocating some of their investments, but are weathering the storm. And 60%, as I think we all know, unfortunately all too well, are taking a hit. And we're using the term slowdown, which could be gentle, frankly, as I said, keenly aware that many companies have come to a complete standstill. But in the near term, at least, heavy scrutiny placed on spend and investments across the board. So at the highest level, you're going to intuitively focus on the 40% across growth and business as usual. They're operational, they're making money, they're spending money. Makes sense. But we need to make sure we're not completely ignoring the 60%. In fact, we may need to spend a little more time digging into those opportunities up front to save that full month of wasted time over the long run. So what to do right now in the name of prioritization? So let's start with the easy ones, growth and business as usual. I mean, first, gather the evidence. They look good on paper, confirm they're actually in a good spot, especially if you're targeting a specific BU or business unit in a large global firm. What I'd ask you is, what if you don't spend the 30 seconds to do a simple Google search? You get on the phone with them and there was a public announcement of a merger, an acquisition, a strategy pivot, and you didn't know about it. Hard to get that credibility back. Identify and confirm your contacts. Net new pursuit, who have you found? What do you know about them so far? What's your hypothesis in terms of what will spark their attention in your initial outreach? What have you learned from other deals you worked that can make you smarter on this one? Existing customer or active opportunity trying to re-engage? Who are you working with? What have your encounters been like in the past? Do you have a mobilizer or not? Not the focus of this call, but obviously we've got so many tools and resources available to you to help you on that, available through the Challenger portal. And then finally, prepare and tailor your commercial insight. Once you've done your homework and found and confirmed your prospects, ready your commercial teaching message. Have you completed your 333? Got to be tailored, got to deliver unique perspective on the target's business needs and challenges. So if you're feeling good about your segmentation, research, and commercial insight-based messaging, you should be feeling good about putting your best foot forward in your pursuit. But a warning, You probably won't hit your number if you only focus on the 40% of companies with relatively rosy financial situations. For one, going to have to be a pretty high conversion rate. And also consider that every other rep in the world is going after those companies and contacts and are probably thinking, this is low-hanging fruit as well. Our take on the matter, your year-end quota difference makers will come from the 60% that you might have dismissed at first glance. Sure, some of them literally cannot buy because they literally cannot operate right now. Your research will reveal that. But many of them, while struggling overall, have healthy sectors for their business or are actively pivoting strategies in other parts of their business to ready themselves for a changing or new market. So let's use what I'm hoping is going to be a universally relatable example, Uber. On paper, you look at Uber in the depths of the crisis with ridership down, 90-something% from its historical peak and say, yeah, they're probably not a great target right now. But if you were to dig a little deeper, you'd learn that Uber Eats is actually killing it right now. So with that in mind, depending on what you're trying to sell to Uber, might there be a business case to be made or value you can demonstrate that wasn't initially obvious when you crossed them off your list at first glance? Perhaps. Point is, we're willing to bet a good portion of you fine folks on the line are going to hit or miss your 2020 number based on your ability to identify the right opportunities across the categories on this page, and then execute efficient and momentum-generating sales cycles across the next several months, applying the nail versus wedge principle. The 60% should not be ignored. They'll require more digging, more prep, and they'll require you to frankly be at the top of your game. But with Challenger, you're using skills and concepts battle-tested and proven through research for just these types of situations. So let's say you're sold on the idea that you can and should do the hard work to uncover the difference makers, the hidden gems that will help you hit your quota this year. So what's the first step? Our recommendation is to assess the reframe potential you have with these opportunities. In other words, how good of a chance does your commercial teaching message have of landing with prospective buyers or your main contacts at these companies? There are a number of ways to get after this, but the simplest form from our perspective is to ask yourself 4 questions. 1, what is the status quo or current behavior I want to correct? 2, what incorrect assumptions lead or led to this behavior? 3, what doesn't the customer know about the problem but should? And 4, is the pain of same greater than the pain of change? By what multiple? Obvious enough to change? How can I quantify this pain? Your ability or inability to answer these questions completely will give you a good indication of whether or not you're going to be able to reframe and disrupt their status quo, creating demand for your service or solution and generating enough urgency and momentum to build consensus for purchase and avoid the 38% graveyard. Basically, you need to be able to articulate what your target customer is missing, how much it's costing them, and why the new way you're proposing is really the only way forward. If you can't honestly make that case to yourself, probably best to deprioritize it early on, as you'll have a heck of a time making that case to your buyers, not to mention their CFO, if necessary, given the size of a purchase. Now, I know walking away from an opportunity is probably the hardest thing you'd ask a salesperson to do. So we've built a simple tool to help you with this. Call it a scorecard, a matrix, a diagnostic, whatever. The goal is to take a batch of your potential opportunities, maybe those that are in your pipeline right now, and score them based on their reframe potential, having asked and answered those 4 questions of yourself. Knowing that some of the deals you're working right now, you will probably lose, use this to prioritize what you're pursuing. Now, for those of us that have been on the Challenger journey for some time, those questions I just showed you may not be new. You know that you must disrupt status quo by identifying the flaws in the current approach and why the pain of same is greater than the pain of change. You know that not all status quos are equally painful.
Some simple segmentation, a la Michael Dell, has shown that there are largely 4 types of status quo that we look to disrupt in our customers' worlds. And some are generally easier to disrupt than others. So starting with the least likely reframe potential, instances where your prospect is already working with a competitor. The case for change isn't black and white because to rip and replace is an expensive endeavor. How painful is their status quo actually? Is that greater than the cost to move to your solution? Not to say you can't win these deals in the right circumstances, but ask yourself, when's the last time you were able to unseat an incumbent competitor? How long was the sales cycle? How badly did things need to deteriorate with your competitor before they switched? Perhaps these are more long-term plays. The second is instances where a company has built their own solution to solve the problem that your product is designed to solve. Typically, there's been a fair amount of investment of time and resources, and at least one pro-status quo blocker who rightfully has a great deal of pride of ownership in what they've built. Not impossible to do, but just be aware of the political nature of these. Use our blocker engagement guide available in the portal to help you navigate through these complex situations. Then there's instances where they've got a series of solutions or processes in place that don't solve the problem as efficiently or effectively as your solution can. The labor and or maintenance costs of these processes and systems add up. And if you can replace all or some of them, represent a clear case for change. Finally, there's no solution in place, and this is either an unidentified or unsolved problem. Clear case for change. You just need to clearly articulate how you are differentiated in your ability to solve the problem. To clarify the framework, I'll give you a relatable example for most of us from the consumer world. So say you're working for a company like Maytag and you're selling washing machines to homeowners. If you were segmenting your territory based on status quos, you've got homes that either have a washing machine, hand wash their clothes, or go to a laundromat. Trying to sell to homes that have a perfectly working washing machine they bought from your competitor can be done, but not as compelling as it is to a household that's hand washing their clothes, who have built their own solution, bringing their clothes to a laundromat, leveraging an indirect solution, or I would say extremely rare case, just aren't washing their clothes at all and have no solution in place. Maybe your washing machine is more energy efficient or much quieter, and you can make a case to replace their existing one. But ask yourself, how much pain are you resolving for those customers? How much urgency can you drive with that? Now, depending on your industry, the maturity or commoditization of your market, this may not exactly represent your world. And if it doesn't, use this framework as a starting point. How would you categorize low, medium, and high reframe potential in your business? What can you change about this framework to make it more reflective of your customer's type of status quo? If it does reflect your environment, use this to inform your scoring on the previous page. Regardless of whether a company is growing, business as usual, or in a standstill, how untenable is their status quo? Which have the most compelling case for change or reframe potential? So, to keep it simple, some key takeaways from this lesson, and I want to highlight some useful resources available to you in the Challenger Activation Portal. Number one, your time is your most valuable resource. So be smart about your pursuits and disqualify early. And if you need a reminder of this, just go on LinkedIn. I'm sure someone is posting about it. The current environment may create a natural nail in your pipeline, but success or failure is going to depend on your execution. Now, third, the right opportunity may be less obvious in this environment, so focus on customer status quo and your ability to reframe. And fourth and finally, you can have the right opportunity, but you could be engaging the wrong stakeholder. So again, I'd ask you to leverage our existing support and resources on mobilizers. All right, Mike, I think we're ready for some questions from the audience. Let's do it.
Excellent. So while we collect some questions from Q&A, Mike and I were first furiously trying to respond to them as they were coming through. Mike, I may ask you to just walk through some of the resources that we've prepared to aid folks moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me take just 2 minutes here, and I realize we're coming up on our 30-minute mark. So anybody who's able to join us, we're going to stick around for an extra few minutes and talk through these, as well as answer some questions. But first thing I want to point out here, on the Challenger Activation portal. Now, quick point of clarification: if you're currently a Challenger Activation client, hopefully you know that the portal is available to you on demand, unlimited access, and you can find lots of great resources, including some brand new ones that I'll preview here in just a second. If you're not sure if your company has access to Challenger Activation, send us a note. You can reach us via email at challengerevents@challengerinc.com. So with that said, if you do have a login, remember to go there, portal.challengerinc.com. A resource that we've built for this lesson in particular, we're calling it our Opportunity Prioritization Playbook. And I won't go too deep into it, but I do want to highlight some resources available. This is effectively a playbook that's going to help you take the lesson that we just shared, the guidance that John just walked through, and put it into practice with real life opportunities and accounts. So that opportunity scorecard that we previewed, that's on the left-hand side there, that's the screenshot you see. The 333 research worksheet, which if you've been through Challenger training before, you understand the importance of doing rigorous yet manageable research. That's going to help you organize your thoughts and answer the most important questions in terms of whether or not an opportunity is worthy of pursuit. Your commercial insight draft, now we start drafting a message that's going to be tailored to a particular opportunity. And then finally, your Challenger action plan. When you have an opportunity in sight, when you've determined that, through use of the opportunity scorecard, your manageable research, and then drafting a tailored message, that you're going to pursue them, you get your plan together to get ready to reach out and engage. So we're really excited about this resource. It's an editable PDF you can download on the portal, take it, run with it, and use it for real life opportunities. I'll mention this quickly as well, and I'll let John close us out. This is just the first in the series, so we're going to have many more of these to come. John, do you want to tell us just a little bit quickly about August 11th, what's coming up next month?
Yes. I mean, now that we've identified the opportunities that we want to pursue, now it's our job to capture attention. And for those of us that get prospecting emails every day, many of us, frankly, don't even open them. We delete them as soon as we see them. So how can we capture limited attention in a limited time span opportunity? And that's going to be the focus of our conversation in August on how we lead with insight.
Yep, absolutely.
We do have a couple of minutes, Mike. Should we answer a couple of questions?
Let's hang on, because there are a few questions that came in. So I just want to, we'll give it another 5 minutes, and feel free to send more as you've got them. I've got a few in queue here. I'll just kind of dictate them here, John, and we can take them one by one. So here's a good one. If you're on the line, you're not an individual contributor, you're a sales manager or you're a director, how can you help lead your team through the challenges that we're seeing from this pandemic? So, and maybe just a little bit of additional context or specificity here. The challenges that we're seeing from the pandemic, I've been involved in lots of conversations, webinars, and we've been doing a lot of research lately. I think you'd probably categorize it at the highest level as customer access or lack thereof. And meaning, look, whether it's a budget issue, a capacity issue, or a priority issue, customers are just not as willing to engage with suppliers and solutions providers as they used to be. Maybe we're talking about the 60% of opportunities or of companies right now that are really in that slowdown mode. How do leaders help their teams through this?
Yeah, I think, when I first looked at this question, my initial reaction was, well, it's coaching, but I can realize and understand that may be categorically unhelpful. We know effective coaching leads to higher engagement, higher returns, productivity, you name it. And if you're curious about whether or not you're coaching effectively, we obviously have a ton of resources on the activation portal to help you avoid the spreadsheet coaching, the one size fits all, and actually engaging in a dialogue that helps lead your frontline sellers to the answer rather than dictating it directly to them. How can we tailor our coaching to their communication styles, which we know from our research is the most critical aspect and most critical thing that sellers look for from managers. But more tactically, there are people out there that are still going to buy. I think that's really what we were trying to articulate as we went through those three financial categories: in growth, business as usual, and during the slowdown. So giving your frontline sellers a framework to help better prioritize how they're spending their time and with what opportunities, leveraging that scorecard, I would say take that scorecard we had, bring it to your next one-on-one with your direct report, say, hey, let's go through the opportunities in your pipeline right now. Let's assess the reframe potential. And let's identify what are the top 2 targets that have the most convincing case for change. And then let's you and I build a plan together for how we're going to execute and bring this thing in before the end of the quarter.
Love it. And I'll make a plug here, just because we ran an entire webinar series across March, April, and May. It's called Navigating Business Disruption, and it's effectively, geared towards leadership roles and individuals and teams, with advice from our challenger advisors. So the folks who facilitate our training, former heads of sales, marketing, strategy, senior level executives, who also train in the classroom, historically live classroom training sessions, now all virtual instructor-led training sessions. But there's actually, I think we did 11 sessions, 11 weeks in a row on different topics, and all focused on navigating this disruptive environment and leading teams through the pandemic. I'm going to copy and paste the link to our website to that replay, the series of replays on demand, available on our public website for everybody to take a look at. Let's take one. There's a couple more coming in, and what we'll try to do and follow up, if you didn't submit these questions anonymously but have your name on it, we'll try to follow up with each of you. One more specific question here, and I think this is a really good one, kind of sum up the topic at hand, which is stop wasting time on the wrong opportunities. Here's the dilemma, and thanks, Wayne, for sending this one in. Here's the dilemma. When do we walk away versus when do we hang in there? I'd hate to walk away too soon and miss out on the opportunity. What would be your talk track to walking away, or what actions would you take, John, if you were to determine, hey, look, I've deemed this opportunity low potential, and I'm going to need to disqualify it or deprioritize it right now for other more viable pursuits? What would you do in that scenario, John?
Yeah, I love this question because I think it hits on some of the misconceptions that folks who maybe just read Challenger Sale or just understand it at a high level think about it of, this would be this very kind of direct, very constructive, tension-oriented conversation of, it's obvious that this is not a priority. You're a waste of my time. Like, I'm walking away. But challengers have a great balance of not only IQ, of, intelligence, but also EQ, the emotional quotient. And we heard from many folks on the line that the average sales cycle was more than 6 months. So I would recommend, frankly, an empathetic approach of, look, we've been engaged in this conversation for the last 6 months. I've been spending as much time as I have with you and with your company because I really believe in the opportunity this investment presents itself. But just based on where we've come to in this conversation, it feels like, this is not the right solution. This pain is not enough or I haven't been able to quantify enough pain for you to really want to take action and do something about this. I think many folks call that the breakup email, if you will, of, hey, I'm going to step away and take my time on some other pursuits. Hopefully, if you've got a mobilizer and they are engaged, at that point, they come to the table and say, no, I've had other things on my plate. This is a priority. We know how painful it is. We've got to get this done. Or they don't respond. And we've left on good terms, and should it come up again, we're in a good position to resume those conversations. But as I mentioned, this is the hardest thing for a salesperson to do, is to walk away from an opportunity. But yes, challengers would recommend a strong, empathetic approach to the conversation that references the quantitative rigor we've prepared of how much it's costing you if you do nothing. That's a great question. I appreciate that one.
Really like that one. All right, so I want to make sure we're respectful of time here for everyone. There have been maybe a dozen questions, all similar, on the will we make this presentation available front. So just to answer that, and there have been a couple of folks asking if they're going to be up on the Challenger portal, folks who do have access, and others who don't have access. So we are going to make this presentation, the replay itself, available to everyone who joined live today. The course materials, the lesson, if you will, is actually something we recorded separately. It is going to be a course available in the Challenger Activation portal. So if you do have access, you'll be able to find that using one of the scrolling banners at the top of the portal when you log in. You'll see it. It should say winning the challenger sale, and it'll allow you to download the lesson as well as the resources available, which would be the opportunity prioritization playbook. So all of this content will be available in the activation portal for challenger activation clients. And then we will make the replay available to everybody on the line who is perhaps not an activation client today, but wants to watch the episode on playback. So hopefully that clarifies things.
Excellent. Well, let me just thank everyone for joining today, and for the 300 odd folks who stuck around for the extra 10 minutes beyond the hour. What I'll leave you with is, some great guidance I got from an early sales manager that I had, who told me, John, before we talk to our customers about what good could look like, we've got to show them what bad will look like if they continue on the status quo and if they do nothing. So it's our sincere hope that you found the guidance, the frameworks, the research impactful for you today. There's going to be some follow-on conversations, I'm sure, that are happening within your organizations. And until then, happy hunting.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
See y'all. Thank you very much.